Here. Schedule it for May and then. Yeah.
Thanks everyone for coming out tonight. I call to order the Culture Climate and Behavior Committee.
Hello.
We're starting.
Let's get started. I am going to call to order the Culture Climate and Behavior Committee meeting on Wednesday, April 17th at 6:34 p.m. in the boardroom of OPLF High School. Please call the roll.
Ms. Alexander,
Present.
Dr. Applewhite, Mr. Brandhorst,
Present.
Mr. Carabello, Mr. Coughlin, Mr. Davis, Mr. Diggs, Ms. Emerson, Ms. Grimes,
Here.
Ms. Janney, Ms. Jones,
Here.
Ms. Lamb,
Here.
Dr. Livingston,
Here.
Ms. McQueen,
Here.
Mr. Lorraine,
Present.
Ms. Newman, Ms. Parker,
Present.
Ms. Scriber, Ms. Stevens,
Here.
Ms. Walquist.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm assuming we have no public comments.
We do, we have two,
We have two.
yes.
Then let me preface the public comment by saying, please limit public comments concerning matters within the jurisdiction of the Board of Education to 3 minutes. This section, this opportunity to speak is not intended to be a dialogue with the Board of Education. The response time to any questions will be up to 2 weeks.
All right. Our first speaker, Ms. Melanie McQueen.
Am I timing or is someone timing?
I need to have my phone. So you got it? Still got it.
Thank you. All right, good evening, everyone. I've missed you all year. That doesn't count. So I'm here because I've been spending my time with our students. For those of you who may not know, my name is Melanie McQueen, and I am the co-president of APPLE, African American Parents for Purposeful Leadership in Education. One of our goals this year, meaning the 2023-2024 school year, was to take our students of color, out of the country. I spent time with the Black Leaders Union, and in that time, we were always in the room, in the activities area. And so I asked them, not just during meetings, but when I'm in the community with them and I see them working, you know, what is it that you would like to do? Would you like to leave Oak Park by any chance? And the answer was always a resounding yes, they would want to travel. And so it was just kismet that I ran into the opportunity to become a chaperone with EF Tours. EF Tours was big at one time, and now C is the big educational travel that students are taking a part of. And it happened like this. I went to a Blue meeting, promised to come back to the Blue meeting with information about going to Japan. After asking them, where do you want to go? People ask me, well, Ms. McQueen, you put this trip together. Is this where you wanted to go? And the answer is no. I want to go to Paris with my husband. That's where I've always wanted to go. This was student-centered. They chose where we were going. And so I created the itinerary, and to share that with you, we were gone for 9 days. And I think it's very important that you understand that this was planned to happen during spring break, where they would miss 1, maybe 2 days of school. They ended up being out an additional 4 days. And the parents agreed. The cost was $5,600 per student, not including what they have to give for tips for a trip guide and for any food or souvenirs they wanted to purchase. So that just is giving you an idea of how important it was to their families that they got to have this experience. I also paid as well. I paid to go on the trip as well. So we went to Tokyo, we went to Yokohama, we went to Hiroshima. Hiroshima was obviously a very sad part of our tour, but it needed to be seen. And we also went to Osaka, which was the most amazing. We had a taiko drum lesson And we also took part of a tea ceremony. We were able to visit 2 islands in between, and the students also had an opportunity to see Beyonce. If you did not know,
Oh,
she dropped her album on that very next day we were there, and I was completely sure that she was not there. I don't live my life by social media, but the students followed her, and by their luck, we pulled up to the front door of Tower Records where she actually was.
wow.
We did not get a chance to see her, but we did get to see video of other people who had been there on time to purchase her album and get the album cover signed. So just to be that close is something they will never forget. So, in saying that, I had also reached out to, the funds that we have in our community to help support the work that Apple was trying to do, which is give our students a truly, multicultural experience. And so I would like this opportunity to say thank you to the Tabinsky Fund and to the Crystal Fund, for assisting one of our students. I've also had, an interview with the Future Philanthropist Group to also get funds as well. So I just wanted to share that with you. The students are preparing something, they were journaling while we were there, to present to the school board, before the year is over about the impact that it made on them. And I hope that you guys support the work that Apple is doing as a volunteer, to ensure that our children are seeing the world.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ms. Ambria Jones.
Hard to follow Beyonce. But under the same vein of Apple, I am this year's scholarship chair. And so I just wanted to share quickly that for every year, or since 2017, we have been awarding our own graduating seniors who apply and are eligible with a full application, which I'll get into in a moment, the Apple Seed Scholarship. Apple stands for African American Parents for Purposeful Leadership in Education. SEED stands for Student Exhibiting Excellence and Determination. So in order to be eligible for the scholarship, they have to complete an essay. The essay question has never changed, which is tell us, or what is your vision for OPRF? The requirements is that they're a graduating senior, as I mentioned earlier, have at least a 2.0 GPA, and then they submit a 500-word essay answering the question. And so this year, the deadline is midnight, Friday, April 26th. The announcement for the winner will be on Monday, May 3rd, and the dinner will be here on May 7th. So 2 quick things. First is that I recognize that writing isn't always the easiest task to do. Sometimes it's hard just to write 1 word. It's sometimes hard just to chop something down from 1,000 to 500. And so I'm making myself available every day for about an hour or 2 on a Zoom link that I haven't shared yet. But we'll be here with students to have an opportunity just to brainstorm and get that ball rolling, because it is a hard question to answer. Because if you ask anyone, any teenager, how was your day at school, they'll say, it was okay. So then imagine asking them to write an essay about their vision for the high school. It'll be, I just want it to be better. So we really want to challenge our students to think of a vision for the high school. I've been privileged enough to attend some of our scholarship dinners. The winner gets to read their essays to everyone, and when you hear their story or their connection to the school and what they hope to see in the future, it really puts me in awe. I'm proud to be an alumni. So, and of course, proud to be a part of Apple. So my 2 things would be, if you know a student, encourage them to apply. I invite you all to come to our dinner on May 7th. It really is a great experience. And then we're still accepting, or I'm saying, we're still accepting donations for the scholarship. We've had it before where we've been able to offer a scholarship not only to our graduating seniors, but to students who are currently in college and providing them more scholarship funds. Because as we know, the cost of college is not lowering, it's only rising. And because of that, that doesn't mean education should not be accessible, especially to the students that we think those things are best. So again, the deadline is on midnight, Friday, April 26th. The announcement for our winner will be on Monday, May 3rd, and the dinner, which I invite you all to come and participate in, will be on May 7th. Thank you.
That concludes tonight's public comments.
Thank you. To approve the minutes from last time, I move to approve the March 13th, 2024 CCD committee meeting minutes as presented. Are there any corrections or adjustments that need to be made? Hearing none. Can I hear a second?
I say.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that brings us to our discussion about students. And I think I'm just going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, again. Tonight is our last meeting, and so we wanted to take, tonight is our last meeting, and we wanted to take an opportunity to reflect a little bit about how our year has been in CCB. So we're doing a look at our meetings that we had this school year in a hopes for us to kind of reflect and to figure out what the benefits were to the fashion in which we did it this time. I want to get feedback from individuals who have been here so that we can find out how we thought of this format. Should we continue with this format? And then I also want to share before I finish this first part, how the meetings we've had and the work that we've done in our small groups has impacted me as the principal and things that I am looking forward to doing in the school that have been influenced by this group. I think so often we say, what is the work that has come out of the meetings that we have when we're in committees? And I want to make sure to share that with you so that you'll know where you'll be hearing and seeing some of the things that we did in our group, in our school. But first, I put on our sheet that I handed out to everyone, just a review of the months and the meetings that we've had. I mean, we've had different categories, all of which came from, if you remember, in our September meeting, we did a workshop where we actually wrote down what our thoughts were in terms of things we would like to see in our school or ideas that we had. From those ideas that we wrote, we actually set each month to looking at and expanding upon what each idea would mean within our school. Some topics had more, I don't want to say pushback, but had some concerns to them, and others really were things that everyone seemed to get behind and thought were good ideas. But I want to think about this holistically, just in terms of as we're considering our school as a whole and the needs within our school, just thinking about effective ways that we can continue to talk about creating a more welcoming environment for all of our students. And I also say staff, for everyone who walks in our building on a daily basis. So first, I want to just do some reflection on the topics you see there. And I wanted to give anyone who had any lingering thoughts on things that we had talked about, or things that you see when you see the title there, or things that resonated with you in those discussions, so that we can do that first. So was there anything in terms of any of the topics that we covered that may have lingering thoughts in your minds? Yes, Ms. Susan.
Okay, so I'm looking at January.
Can you something to the
Oh,
mic?
yes, sure, sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm looking at January, walk in another person's shoes. And I have to say I'm disappointed because we had such a big thing, at least in my world, happen this year, which was October 7th. And it came up as an issue in the school. It was in the newspapers. It's there's been a lot happening, and it hasn't been included in any of our conversations. And I'm puzzled by that, and I'm disappointed by that. And it makes me question what we're talking about when we say a welcoming and we want to be a welcoming environment for students, all students. That this wasn't a concern that was brought by the school to this committee with so much turmoil. So that's
Thank you for sharing. that. Thank you very much.
Let me ask you something, because we've thought length and deeply about doing that and how to do it. And I think that part of the issue was it's really hard to come up with a way that would be a conversation that would lead to a solution, that would lead to a specific thing that the school could do. I think that was the concern, that it would be obviously a highly charged conversation, an emotional one and a difficult one. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think the hope that we've had for this year, for the work of this group, is that we could make an immediate connection between the work of the committee and some concrete thing, some concrete improvement or initiative. That we could provide to students. So what might that have looked like? And what might it look like next fall?
You're right. I think that's a great question. And I think that my understanding is that there are many people within the school community, and with Oak Park River Forest, geography, just citizens who have ideas about what could come together and have some conversation about this to support the school in, I think it requires a lot of dialogue, and I'm not. It seems like the dialogue that was happening was in a very enclosed space, and it wasn't. So I would just suggest these issues that have surfaced in our world, actually on the planet, you could even say. It's had so many reverberations. It's complicated, and to think of it in terms of a solution the school can come up with. I have something in my own head about that, about an approach, a perspective the school could take that's very education oriented, but to have a framework for bringing just the issue to this committee, that there needs to be a concrete solution that comes out of it. Seems like, who knows? The dialogue needs to start, and especially in the topic of climate and culture, and you could say behavior way too. I don't know. It's just a big question mark why there wasn't space provided. And I think that overall, I'd say a comment too in general is that the good thing about structure is that there's structure, and I think we didn't go off on tangents, and that was really helpful. And we had these questions on the wall. We talked, we each got to weigh in on them, and I think that process was great. And in real life, stuff happens that you can't always if you have a structure laid out, there's if you only use that structure, if you only permit what's in the structure to be part of the conversation in this committee, it seems like it just doesn't. That's what was missing, I would say. There needs to be more formal opportunity in the process, I would say, given this year, but I would think any year, anything could come up that would be an important aspect to include in this committee. Like, are there issues that people are seeing in the community or experiencing themselves around climate, the sense of welcome and culture here in the school community that people want, it's like, this is, however much time you would give to that, this is a time for someone to speak to that. Or ask questions or something. So that would be a suggestion for next year.
Thank you.
Most appreciative of your sharing that, because I think it's important that there is space that we share the things that are most important to us. And then figure out, how does that fit in our overall picture of making sure that everyone represented feels as though they're seen in that space. So thank you very much for that.
Yes, and I when you just said that, something popped into my head too, that the nature of our circle work had really shifted. That again, that was, we always had a question that we would respond to, but there was less personal kind of checking in, that at least since I've been here and we had that circle process, people had all kinds of things to say that were much more personal, and there was space for that. And I didn't see much of that this year at all. And I think that is a missing piece. Because the process, we got to know each other in some different ways because of that. And I think created more connection within the group.
Are there other reflections on topics? And then I'll kind of, when I get through, I'll bring it all together in terms of what everyone's saying. Any other comments on the format, just format that we experience? Yes, Karen.
So I know in the past, I kind of missed this more in-depth circle time this year too, and I know we always used to have an hour and a half. It was mostly cut back to an hour this year, which I presume everybody has too many meetings in their life, so to cut it back by a half an hour was probably welcomed, I presume, on your administrator's part. But there was no time for the same kind of circle time with an hour. We could barely ever get through it in an hour and a half in previous years, and now we're still kind of struggling to get through it in an hour, but I felt kind of that was a loss to cut back on the time. But anyway, and I would also say, I'm glad to hear we may hear tonight about some of the outcomes of the topics we discussed, because it felt like unfinished, like we said all this stuff and what happened, So I'm glad to be here tonight to hear that, but I think maybe more periodic checking in about the outcome of what we talked about during the year would also be nice.
Thank you so much for that too. Other reflections, yes, something.
If I understand correctly, I think the first question I heard you ask was reflections that we had on the topics throughout the year. Was that the, okay, I wanted to address that really quickly. The two conversations the first conversation that we had in October about peer jury and mediation, I felt was our most dynamic and fruitful conversation. We had a lot of different opinions on if a peer jury could work here at OPRF. And I think that there was this insight that I felt like I finally got from faculty here of how they see their students operate versus myself as an alumni saying, I would have loved to have had a peer jury experience or at least peer mediation. So just to add a lasting thought from that conversation, I would add, I still think it should happen. I would still like to see a piloting program, if not peer jury, peer mediation, because we're seeing that, or at least in my experience, and I'm on the fence because I have 2 high school age siblings. While they may not be comfortable mediating conflict with adults in the room, talking to a peer or someone who's maybe a class above or a class below them feels a little bit more comfortable. And I think just having that space, having that resource would be nice. Again, I'm not in the school building all day long, but I have the students who are here and they tell me, about their experience. So that's just one lasting thought I had about that. And then in February, when we talked about peer mentoring, I have mentioned my experience as a mentor and a super mentor, welcoming in our first year students And I think the only comment I missed out in that conversation again is having something throughout the entire academic year. I think we do a great job at the beginning and we do a great job at the end celebrating our students. But there's something where we don't. I think it just should happen year long. That's just my thought. The stress that finals week brings, could use some enthusiasm, some empowerment, some encouragement, the same way that we welcome students here. We should let them know that they're welcome, you know, with their feelings and their thoughts and test preparations in that point in time. What that looks like, I'm not sure. Actually, that's not true. What it looks like for me is have teachers, parent advocacy groups, alumni coming in and cheering our students on. Because it is such a daunting period of time and it can be stressful mentally and emotionally for our students. And that's not what I want them to associate their high school experience with. It's like, we got the rah-rah when I was the first year and then that went away, but now I'm stressed out and I don't want to be here. That's not the high school experience, in my opinion. But as far as peer mentoring, expanding past the mentors and the super mentors for first years, I think there should be like a buddy program if the student wants to match any grade level with any grade level. I think you can be a freshman and still mentor a freshman. I think you could be a senior being mentored by a junior, but some kind of accountability partner or buddy to help you through your experience. Because again, we love our counselors here, but sometimes we go and visit them, we don't feel like we're getting that like heart-to-heart personal connection. But talking to another student who may have had that experience could be that outlet or resource that we need, that we may not, you know, rely on. Because we have our star students, right? If I say, give me a student that you think just exemplifies OPRF, and a student that comes to mind for you, we should be highlighting those students as potential resources or peer mentors year round, not just in the beginning or at the end.
Thank you so much for that.
May I just add a follow-up to that point? So I do think that the school has done an amazing job this year with that leadership launch program of the students in study hall. So older students are in the freshman study hall, and then there's activities and lots of just dance or going to the football field. And you know, also art activities, craft activities, cookie decorating, and they've done that throughout the year during the study hall. And I have an interesting perspective because I have 2 freshmen in the building, and it's you know, they have different study hall leaders, and it's been a fantastic program. I also have a senior who kind of had a COVID freshman year, so it was none of that was even available to him. So truly appreciative of this leadership launch and how that's playing out this year, and freshmen just love it, and my kids' friends love it. Different groups of friends. I mean, it's an incredible program.
Thank you for bringing that up. I actually was going to share that because that's, though leadership, I believe, was a program when you were here. When I got here in 2018, people would opt into leadership. And so there were less leaderships than there were freshman study halls. And I said, well, why don't we just push everybody into launch, and then the overflow that can't fit into what we have goes to study hall, because they should have this experience all year long with the older students, building a program for them and like working with them all year long. So that's what we switched to. And as a result of that, we've grown it so that we have another teacher working there, which has allowed us to have 3 more sections of the class and more students exposed to it. And so the freshmen are getting a year-long experience of that mentoring, but I hear also what you're saying, which is it sure would be nice that we still have some type of touch for those who would want it in the sophomore and junior year as they go on. So that's an added point, but the launch did grow so that we could have more students. And that is now a very high point where parents are like, I want my child to get launched for sure. And that's been very interesting. And I think that's how change occurs. It's like taking a step to move something forward and trying it to see how it goes. If it didn't go well, we could always increase study halls next year, you know, but let's see it, but we have to try it. And there's always that hesitancy at the first part, like, what will happen if we change it? And I'm like, it'll just change. And then you can change it back if you need to, or you can change it. So it's like having that courage to just go ahead and try it. So thank you for the comments and thank you for that.
And I was just gonna say on the flip side, it's really great skills for the older students to learn when they're working with the younger kids. as well.
Absolutely, and they do it with such enthusiasm, like the seniors who work that program are very proud to be in it. It's not a burden like, oh, I have to go to my, launch. I see students in the hall and I'm like, where are you supposed to be? We're in leadership, we're just putting our thing together for our students. Okay, I just wanna make sure, everything was okay, but they take pride in the work that they do. They get trained to do that throughout the year and at the beginning of the year, and it's a very good program. The beauty of that helps me to build on, like, in terms of what I was speaking of with the topics and to address what we heard as we were going through. So CCB last year, as Susan and Karen were saying, had a different format as we would come in. The question I had coming into it with two new board members this year was, what is our purpose? Because I think it's very important. If you remember the very first meeting, I started with what's our purpose, right? And to me, I took having this group as a sounding board to come out with some outcomes that we can try and have the courage to do some changing to see how that works in our school community. The beauty and the absolute wonder of diversity is that you have all different types of people from all different types of life converging in a space. And we are working together to make sure we're reaching a common goal, which at this school is the education of our students. The challenges of diversity is that every single being has a different needs. And everyone would like to have their needs met. Because when there's a need, you want to meet the need. But there's no one answer for that ever. And so what will be welcoming and making one person safe is not always what's going to be welcoming and to making all students safe. And the thing that the administration has to do here with the help of the other staff, we have to put out information, content, touches, relationships in order to make every individual feel some sense of safeness and welcome. But I understand as a leader that I will never 100% meet the needs of 100% of the people 100% of the time. So that means there are times when you'll come in and you'll feel like the most special person in the world because of an interaction you had with someone when you walk in the door. But then there's another time when you'll feel like they came short because we didn't necessarily talk about a specific issue in a specific way that you thought would best serve. I think it's important that we continue to have the conversations and that we continue to bring the needs to the group, because if we're truly authentic about who we are as a community, we will want to still have the conversation and still have the meeting of the minds in order to find out what can we do. But I put that out there because I think at times too, we have to be, I'll say, honest about what can we do, and then how many people are going to be involved in the doing. Because that's what I like. Like, I am big on ideas. And then I say, you coming with me? Because it's important to feel as though you have people who are cheerleading along with you, or at least willing to try, so that we can make a difference as we're going along. And that's why I made the suggestion of having the topics, because as much as I love when we would come together and have our personal moments, which I do think are very, very important, I also wanted them to be guided towards our mission of what we're trying to accomplish here. So I'm a people person, and I like having conversations with people, and I like to think with people. But we don't come here just to handle our own personal need. We are representatives. I always tell people, we are Congress. We are here representing the needs that need to be addressed out there. So at the end of the day, I need to walk out of here with a list of outcomes to share with you about how I'm going to take what we spoke about, and this is where I'm going to try in our areas in the building to make them come alive, if that makes sense. And so I want to find out how we can best blend the need for our personal conversations and bringing up our thoughts and challenges and how to work that through on behalf of the children that are counting on everyone in this space to make this school what we know it should be and what it can be. And so people around school will hear me say that a lot. I need our comment to end with, And this will help children so that we are not just meeting adults' needs or the needs of just one person for one child, but we're meeting the needs of children as we go through. So that guided how we had the format this year, and it doesn't mean we can't change. That was just an idea, and that is why I asked about the reflection in terms of how was that? Because it's not perfect, but we need to talk about then how we can massage it to be what it is that we want it to be. Okay.
Because I've been following along since you my target. However, I did appreciate the brainstorming session that we started off with. I think what could help to improve that is to maybe present the topics that everybody came up with in their brainstorm session, maybe vote on one or two that we want to do a deep dive with for the entire year. So that we can focus heavy on like these one or two topics that came up and have some solutions and some things that come out of that that we can probably put feet to as a committee.
So deep dive in that very first session where we thought it up and decide there which ones we want to continue on as a group.
So I like the brainstorm session of the first session,
Yeah.
and then maybe like the second session, say these were the topics that came out of it, let's vote, and then
Got it.
for the rest of the year, we're doing deep dives.
Got it, that makes sense, because we met as a side committee.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting idea. So rather than trying to do 6 or 8 topics across the course of the year and limit the conversation about each one of those to a single meeting, you do a deeper dive over the course of multiple meetings. And I think in doing that, it would also give us some space to have a more robust at the time, to kind of slow down and incorporate some of the things that this group has traditionally done, have conversations that don't necessarily lead directly to a solution, but that are important to have. I think that's marrying those things together, I think would be really interesting.
So 4 outcomes, and then we can move to part 2. And I'm gonna go as we have these listed here. So from October, which was peer jury, where there was a mixed reaction in terms of what a peer jury would actually be. I'm gonna tie that a little bit with February, which is peer-to-peer mentoring. Oftentimes not even often, all the time I hear student voice. Have we asked the students, what do the students say? To me, as an adult, to whom voice is wanted, action is also requested of us. What I don't want to do is create an environment where students are just encouraged to tell us what they want and not encourage them to also be part of the action of that want. Or else you just have people saying, and that's a luxury. Someone has to then do the work. Yes, and so I want to build a child who is resilient enough to not see working with their peers in an adversarial way, because oftentimes it comes up like, they might be scared, and what if the people come, like, we were saying things where it was like, what if someone comes after the child? And my thought always is, what if both children grow and learn and are able to help each other get from the place where they were to where we want them to be? So I don't always see everything as a negative and how it could adversely affect, but I see it as how could they grow from giving each other opinions throughout there? So I would like to work on making sure that we're working with students on bringing their voice forward while also asking them for the action behind that voice. One of the first things is with our wellness program. Our equity director had a meeting with the students, and most of the students talked about how the wellness is a good idea, but there are some things that need to be worked out in terms of how it's presented in classes, people's comfort with that, how students react to wellness holistically. So like understanding that it's for everyone and not just for some students. We're going to student council to generate ideas the students want to do for those topics. So finding out, what would you like the wellness topics to be? And then how are you going to help feed into those lessons that we give our teachers so that there's ownership by the students and there's more of if I see a student who's kind of like, this is dumb, I can say, hey, students, put time into this. We need to like at least hear what they're trying to say, so that students feel ownership and it's not just happening to them, but it's happening with them. And student council was picked along with one other group in the school because we consider them the Congress for the students. They are the students who come together with the ideas for the different grade levels in the building. So that is one idea with that. Again, it's not peer jury. It's not, we're starting baby steps to getting students to feel as though my voice led to my action this way. So voice with action. The second one in November was middle and elementary school outreach. And we are expanding our conversations with the middle schools, starting with year 2, where we are going to be going into the middle schools to talk to our 8th graders before they come about expectations when we get here. And so I have members of my admin team and from our pupil support services going with me to our D97 and D90 middle schools to have conversations directly with the students about happy graduation. This is where you're headed. This is what our expectations of you are. We know you can do it. We're excited to have you join us. You know, we welcome new Huskies. And so we are going to kind of lay the groundwork for them to be ready to come to the high school, so they'll have the summer to think about those things, answering questions they gave us as we reached out to them about what's important. And though we as adults have all this what we feel is important, the kids will tell you, we just want to know, do we all get to go to lunch together still? Like, how do you get to your class on time? How many minutes do you have between classes? How do you get through this building in that number? Those are the things that are concerning them as 8th graders. And I know we think it should be a lot more sassy than that, but it really is that. Like, they just want to fit in and they don't want to come here and stick out and become whatever sticking out in high school becomes. And so that's something that we're going to be doing as a team and hopefully building out even more visits to our schools. Walking in another person's shoes is going to be a priority to me school-wide. Again, diversity brings in lots of differences that should be celebrated and enjoyed by all. But there's also a sensitivity that needs to go along with that. Meaning, I may not have the answer for exactly how you feel welcome. Would you talk to me about how you feel welcome? So that you can let me know instead of me just assuming, well, it would be a parade, right? Because everyone loves parades. It's asking the people and feeling comfortable to be in conversation, community, and relationship with each other, to finding out what that person needs so that we truly are giving a gift and not just forcing what we want on to other people. And so my question to our staff as a whole is, who do we want our students to be? And what are we willing to do to get them there? Because all of them need to get there. Even the A+++ with all the athletic ability and in every activity still needs to get there. The there that we as adults know there to be. What are we willing to do and step out of a comfort zone to do? Because sometimes it means I have to help somebody else and that might not be my immediate job. And that can sometimes be uncomfortable for people. But what I can say is we'll never get where we're going if everyone is waiting on the person over there to do that part. Sometimes we have to do other parts and we've got to get comfortable with that. So that is important to me in terms of prioritizing the perspectives and needs of other people. And we have to look at that as a whole staff. And that's going to be part of my kickoff for the staff at the start of the school year. And I think I did all of it. Oh, and then the understanding BEP goes without question in terms of how we are using restorative practices in order to grow the skill set of students so that they can walk away from behavioral interactions within our school, knowing how to not be in that place again. And I do want this group to know that your ideas from that were very enlightening to both David, Noreen, and I, because you brought to it a sensitivity that typically does not come to us. People are like, they're not learning anything, like you're just letting them, like, no, it's like understanding the story, but not stopping at that and being sad about the story and then go ahead, you can terrorize the whole school, not that, but like, how do we get you with your story to the next step? Because that story is going to be your story. You don't ever lose your story. I used to tell people, the only way as teachers we're going to do this is if we take them home with us. Are we going to do that? And everyone's like, I can't take them home. Right. So they're gonna have this story, but how do we help them take that story and take the life that's being in that story and get to step stone B? Because all of us had to take our story and keep moving with it. And we do it at varying levels of efficacy. That's what we have to do for our children, and we have to be sensitive and patient because all of us are not who we used to be that we go through. So those are just some of the outcomes that came from this group in terms of work that's being done. And I'm sorry I took time from part 2, but some of it was woven into there as well in terms of what we had gone through, so.
That was great. That's so great to hear the concrete things that have come out of the sessions we've had. So we also wanted to open it up. We've already kind of heard comments tonight already, really good ideas and sharing about things that we could do differently next year. Approaches that we could take, ways that we can conduct these meetings differently. So I just want to open up to any other comments on that topic. And I also, the other thing that I would love to hear your insights around the organizing theme for this whole school year was what can we do to make OPRF a more welcoming place for all students? Every single subtopic that we covered through the year was really connected to that. That was the opening activity in September, and that's the theme that we try to carry through this entire year. I would love to hear thoughts about a similar organizing theme for next year that we can attach our work to, if anybody has any ideas.
So I wanted to heard a lot. I've been here since the inception of CTB and was part of both of the strategic planning committees, as was my daughter back in 2010. The strategic plan priorities are even posted. And so I just wanted to give some background to the questions as to why we're here and what we're doing. If you go back to any video that I've been on at the beginning of the year, that's one of the first questions that's always asked. And I always bring up that we do have a purpose which comes out of the strategic plan that was voted upon. And we're spending our time here once a month to look at data, to ensure that the strategic plan is being followed. And if it's not working, we're supposed to be presenting solutions to the school board. So when I hear us creating topics, it's like we're recreating the wheel again and again and again. We already have a purpose. Has anybody reviewed the strategic plan? Have we had that conversation of, now that you reviewed it, this is what happened last year in accordance to the strategic plan. This is where we are. This is the data. Now, this is what's presented before you as to what we can tackle moving forward. That's number one. Number two, students should be here. We're here for them. If it wasn't for my kids, I haven't been in high school in over 30 years, and it's different. Not to mention, our kids are missing, including the students that are coming in, 2 years of development with other youth. They do not all have the ability to decide what's right, what's wrong, what leadership is, how to even make friends. So we have to take that with a grain of salt. Of course, our kids are amazing, but they don't all have that capability. I just had the luxury of being with 4 of your students. 4. And I thought that was going to be a piece of cake. It was not. But I had to practice what I preach and allow them room to feel what they were feeling and redirect them in love. It was difficult. But that's what I said I was going to do, and that's what I expect my school to do. I would never put those students in a position to decide the fate of another student. I would never listen to them for an idea to move my school forward, let alone them tell me what they think the future of our school should be. They don't have that yet. They still need us adults to help them and guide them throughout this process. And it's going to continue until you get the kindergartners that experienced the pandemic through the school. Especially when it comes to the behavioral education plan. If you do not have the students of color that it's affecting in this room, you're not being equitable. You're not listening to the kids who are actually being punished. You're not listening to the kids who are losing their privileges and not able to do things. You're not listening to their parents. We're inviting their parents to come here and say, hey, how did you like how the behavioral education plan affected your child? Did it work? Is he better? Did he understand? Do you think he could be a leader now? I had to, again, allow space. It was hard. I said, you know what? You need to go home. I couldn't say that. We're going to work it out. We have to give them that chance to work it out. Now is the time when they're in this safe space before they get out into the world. Now, as far as what I've already mentioned about the strategic plan, this is supposed to be a safe space for all of us. And if we feel that there's a problem in our community, we are all equipped with intellect and with education and know-how to pivot. There's no way, if there had been a shooting at our school, God forbid, that I feel like I could not come to CCB and know that that's what we're going to talk about. And we're going to get our feelings out about it. And we're going to share how it made us feel, how it affected our household. And then say, okay, now let's structurally talk about what we could do for it to be safe. That's unfair. You should absolutely have a safe space to do that and pivot whenever necessary. Last but not least, when we talk about the things that are going on in the school, and I'm happy to hear that your children are enjoying the leadership. Peer mediation, just as our tutoring center, has to be effective. You can't just check a box and say, we got it. We have to look at other schools and see, where is it working? Where's your data showing us that it's working, that your kids are coming out better on the other side? Instead of us saying, well, we have to talk about it, we got to think about it, and then we have to test it. It's 2024, about to be 2025 before we know it. There are things that are tried and true that are working. You all have relationships within the educational system where people say, we have this great program. And I know you've all said, well, why don't we have it at our school? It's working over there. Our demographic is the same. Our school's larger, but our demographic is the same. Maybe that would work. We don't have to continue to try to recreate the wheel. It's already out there. Case studies are out there for things that we can do that can work. And just like with the leadership program, everybody likes it and jumps on board. They'll jump on board on the other good stuff too. So I just want us to keep in mind, we're not here wasting time. We're here because of that strategic plan. And the board should be hearing what we are suggesting that we do along with student voice. And if students don't want to come here because they have other things going on, then we need to make space for them during the day. There's no excuse for that. If we want their voice, we have to go to them. This is one last thing I'm going to say, and you all are probably already familiar. When it comes to people who have done drugs, there's a part in their brain that is now no longer functioning. They've ruined it. They've burned those cells out, and that's where you do your common sense. Am I making sense here? Have you heard of this, or you have not heard of this? Yes. Their common sense is gone. So when you say to a person who's strung out on drugs, there's a homeless shelter. There's a place that's going to give you free food. There's a soup kitchen. There's a place that's going to allow you to take a bath. There's a place that's going to give you free health care. Why aren't you going? That part of their brain is gone. There's a place in California now, you guys may or may not know about Skid Row. Instead of waiting for people to come in to get help because we think they have the sense to do so, they take the resources to them. That's what we have to do. We have to take the resources to our kids and stop assuming that they have the answer. They can barely tell you why they feel the way they feel, and they're crying. So let's just think about that and know that this does have a purpose and we need to go back to the strategic plan.
Thank you for that. Thoughts, anyone else?
Can you repeat the question again?
I'm curious if people have thoughts about a theme for next year.
I'm gonna say I really appreciate the viewpoint that you just gave. It would really help me if you are in the space sharing with us monthly, so that you have an idea and you're able to see everything that's happening so that we can figure out how the two fit together. I agree with you in terms of times have changed. And that's important for us to recognize in terms of the work that's like being pushed forward. But it's very in the midst of a process, and everything has to be a process. We're too large of a school board not to be a process. We have to be dug into the process. And so for this year and this meeting, this was this process. And it helps to have seen the process so that we can see how it did fit with the strategic plan. So I appreciate the comments, but that would be of help to me, just in terms of the work that the people in this room did as they came each month to feed into that, some of which you even said that they actually did each month. And I think that might have been helpful for us to be at this point, try to assess it as well.
Ellen, you bringing up the strategic plan was great. I appreciate that. And it, yeah.
I want to hear you.
Yes, I want to be heard. Thank you. So, yeah, I just appreciate that you brought up the strategic plan. And it brings me to my question, Tim, that you asked us to respond to about what should the theme be. This year we had creating a welcoming environment. And I just had a question that for me got, it's like, oh, well, my question isn't so far off, because my sense is that what this committee is tasked with is this strategic issue around a welcoming environment here at school. So isn't that, so my question is, isn't that what we're about as a committee? So I just got confused by you, by what other theme should we have? But that's a big topic.
Okay. I guess what I'm asking is there a different way to say it that maybe leads to a different set of conversations, right? And when I hear the word welcoming, it leads me to think of a certain set of things. And so, it's sort of what is there a different tagline or different kind of organizing statement that might lead us to consider a different set of related topics.
Oh, no, it's like, I always think it's really, what you just said is really interesting to me, because just to get everybody's perspective on, well, what does welcoming mean to you? It's like you said, are there other words? It's like, I'm sure that there's other meanings to people that we're not saying about what welcoming means. What do you mean by welcoming, or what do I mean? It's a big word.
And maybe that should be our starting point next year, is to have that conversation and see where that leads. Even before we try to map out the year.
I think that, one thing that going back to your initial statement, Susan, and listening to a lot of what you said, Melanie, that just fundamentally a good place to start is looking at what is our broader environment, how do we, where where don't we have the horizontal axes with our students that we need to focus more, apply more focus on. When we have been dealing with this incredibly charged emotional world post October 7th, we've taken a lot of things for granted. We've taken things for granted that students will have the wherewithal to provide an impact statement to the administration about how it's affecting them, instead of us going directly to them. Thinking of that more deliberately and meaningfully is, I think, really crucial for this committee in the coming year. And that includes just the thinking more broadly about our environment and what are the how are we systematically thinking about tactically how we're engaging with our student body on a regular basis, and providing the spaces in real time to pause and listen and create those needed horizontal axes where they might not be present. So I think that's a huge takeaway from what we can look at, what we've learned painfully so this year, and how we can create a better community and try to start brainstorming on how we can create a better community. I think it also includes looking at what our tools of learning and how we, that we routinely use in our community. I mean, one thing that I'm really high on right now is listening tours, which are really great. It's a great eval tool that kind of, unlike focus groups where you could have group speak and people kind of feed off each other, you commit to doing listening tours, routinely. You're just going in and you're talking to the students. You're just going around. You have a bit of a script, but you're kind of getting students individually, and you're getting a feel for what they're saying in the building, and it's just a really cool thing. So I think it also includes having a discussion about what are our tools of learning that we have in place, and what's the cadence of those tools and so on.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no,
No, you go ahead. It's probably a phone one. I was holding tight.
Okay. What I was gonna add was, what I've been hearing, and I kind of felt the same way, of like, okay, you're welcome here, is like, if that's the thing, then keep it going. But my thought was maybe celebrate it and not tolerate it. I've been in higher ed spaces for a really long time, so it's always remixed into something else, but that's essentially what we're trying to tell our students, is that you can identify as this, and that, and we celebrate you, we see you, we recognize you, and we want you here, not just because you're a student here, but because of the diversity you bring to our school community. But for me, what I was missing, and I wrote down because I didn't want to forget, the impact these meetings have had on me as a member is making me feel a part of the conversation, but not so much a part of the action. So I feel like we're having great conversations, we're having great dialogue, and then I'm like, I think Karen brought this up, I'm like, and then where did it go? I'm like, what did I do? So I think having a listening tour, which was my thought of like, if one of us can dedicate our time, I'll make myself available for something like this, of saying, okay, I can visit Blue, I can visit Tau Gamma, I can visit the student council and let them know what CCB is about and how I can be a resource. Because I'm like, okay, this is good for us, but how are we engaging with the actual school community? I think I'm always talking from an alumni perspective or from a parent advocacy group perspective, but I'm not engaging with students outside of my own siblings to know exactly how we fit or how we push the strategic plan to our students. And that would work for me, is having like an actual engagement or participation plan with the students that we're talking about, that we're trying to impact. So that would work for me. What doesn't work, and this is a very unpopular opinion, circle groups. I really enjoy hearing you guys' stories and experiences. I'm more of an action-based person. I enjoy talking about the problem, but afterwards I need a goal that we're working towards. I'm a SMART goals girly. Give me a chart and some bullet points, and that's what I'm working towards. So in the next year, that's what I would like to see. We can spend the whole month of September having circle groups, but then October, we're doing some action towards it. That's what I would like to see. I know everyone may not feel the same. You can have another 30 minutes at the end of circle groups, but that's not what I feel like my purpose here is to do. And I think moving forward, we need to be, I would like to see an index of when we start actually being involved in some of the things that we are proposing. So for example, with the peer juries or peer mediation, I wrote, how are we presented and introduced to the school community as a resource? Does that look like we come in orientation, when you have a table, and we say, we're CCB, our purpose is to make sure that you feel welcome, that you feel celebrated, not tolerated, you know, whatever our tagline jingle is for the year. Excuse me. But having a introduction point to them now, are we in the announcements? Hey, CCB is having a meeting. Come, if you want to talk about your experience, how your culture, you know, you didn't feel welcome, or, you know, us not being like a complaint hotline, but more about an open space, a safe space for our students to, again, recognize their feelings, but also say, we're actually working towards it. Here's our SMART goals. Here's our plan. Here's the action by the end of the year. And then the last thing that I wrote was, again, and I said this earlier, but what are we for the staff? Are we a sounding board for them? What are we for the student? Are we a touch point for cultural interventions or engagements, arguments, disagreements? What are we for them other than an opportunity for them to feel like we're just presenting something like, what do they get from us and what do we get from them? Like with that exchange, I don't want it to be transactional, but what does that exchange look like? How are we, what feedback, what does that relationship look like? Because again, when I was a student here, the school board meetings was where all the adults went. I didn't feel comfortable going there until there was an extreme situation or circumstance that I felt like the school needed to know what's going on because no one else is talking about this. That's not what I want CCB to be about. When I was a part of the steering committee as a student here, the way that CCB was, it wasn't called it at the time, but the envision was if a student or faculty or staff member saw something shift within the school culture, the culture as a school. So we no longer were promoting those things that are best, that no longer was our vision or no longer what we were standing for, or if the climate, if things start to feel, you know, like a big divide in some type of way, then the committee would come in and address it and say, hey, there seems to be a really big shift here. How can we address it? How can we talk about it? And I feel like we're kind of missing, I feel that we're kind of missing that as like being a little bit more reactive, and I want us to be a little bit more proactive to say, here's what we do, here's our relationship to you, and here we are as a resource.
Can I jump on that?
Sure, yeah, I have a whole new time.
Okay, all right, that reminded me, we're all coming up, okay, I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, because I've been in CCB for a number of years. There's been much talk over the years about getting student voice. I think in previous years, we have had more students come, but again, it's gotta be a really obnoxious meeting to sit through about it. So there was talk of CCB members going to visit student groups. Oh my God, it was such an adult format that I've been through before. We went through grids of who's gonna go where, developing the questions, and did we ever go? No. I came, Karen Grimes came, but
And of course I will.
I know. But I'm in a position where I'm retired. I have the school day that I can do that. Not everybody has, and I understand. And I don't know that we have enough. There's so many student groups. Which ones do we choose, right? But it's an idea that has been on the ballot before, to get student voice. And as a previous school, I'm very comfortable just talking to groups. I would want a note taker, not the person who's trying to lead the class. I'm not gonna be sitting there, you can't engage with students like that. I would see one or two members engaging with students and somebody's there taking notes, because if nobody took notes on what was said, it's not retained for posterity, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just putting that forward, that was considered at one point. I think it's a good idea. No, I didn't mean that.
I just want to add a point to that, to add on to the idea, which was inviting all of the club leadership here instead of, you know, the students feeling like they were obligated. We were just looking, you know, to the leadership and say just a representative of each club to come visit us, you know, from time to time to to hear about, what was going on. Because in our bubble, because we are in a bubble, some kids, and I'll pick on the theater kids, they're having a grand old time. And they have no idea about any issues or any problems, like they're just working really hard for their next production. So I do not want there to be this thought of, all these kids are having all these problems. No, we have kids who have found a home, they are very happy, and they would have no idea that there's anything but good things happening in the school unless there's a fight during lunch. As we're thinking about getting feedback from students and going to them instead of them coming to us. What I have learned, because I was a youth leader for over 10 years, kids cannot tell you about their day, they cannot tell you what they like, but they can darn sure tell you what they don't like. So we have to rely on the smart people in the room and just reformat those questions to get the nuggets of what it is that we want.
Thank you. So going back to, I think, to the initial question of a theme for next year, and this popped in my head in last month's meeting, really stuck with me, and how we were all talking about harm. And a faculty member here literally said it was a travesty how much the word harm is used. I assume in his classrooms. I don't want to, he's not here, so I don't want to speak for him, but it is in our notes from last time, our minutes. But what if a theme for next year is something like that you were talking about, which is getting them there? So is that resilience? Is that persistence? Is that, there's gonna be any number of words. But if our goal is to get our students there, that's education, that's dealing with being uncomfortable, that is dealing with happiness, that's dealing with joy, that's dealing with failing, that's dealing with all the things. And what you said just resonated with me is our students lost 2 years, social, educational, and they'll never get them back. Because K through 12, that's it, that we had a one and done chance, and it's gone forever. And studies done out of England in the 1940s, when kids were moved from London during the bombings and went to the south or wherever they went to the country where there were fewer bombing situations, it was determined that that cohort of kids never were pursued higher education, made less money. And so when you said that, I was like, oh, I read that a while back, and I was like, oh, it's true. You see it at home, and then we're living it, and who knows what's going to happen. So if we can work on getting them there, whether that's persistence or resilience, and I think this year there's been a lot of talk of harm and talk of all the things. But regardless of the harms, we still have to get there. We have to hear the harms, but we have to still, in light of everything, go forward. I had the amazing opportunity last night to go to Dr. Applewhite's event with Dr. Mahmood. It was super cool. Were you there? No, okay. I didn't think so. I just wanted to make sure.
That's a mirror of the one she did for students that I was telling about.
Yeah, correct. And then there's going to be a follow-up one next month, and that one is a little bit longer. And she did have a slide up that talked about a safe space, a brave space, and then the third one, which I can't remember, and I meant to look in the email before I came here tonight, and I did not. But I think our goal for our school should be that third one. It's not a safe space, it's not a brave space, it's sort of a melting pot of those two. And I could look up on the slide and let you know.
Like that, and tying the pieces together. And thank you for going to that. I put your name.
I wonder how I got it.
Guys, we are so far over time, but if anybody else has one more comment. Okay.
I do.
Go ahead.
I think that, well, let me start by preface by saying I am not a fan of social media. Okay, I do have social media accounts. I don't use them as our community uses it. However, I do feel that it is a benefit to us, although toxic. When parents aren't coming here telling us what's going on, they're definitely on social media complaining about it. And I don't know if our communication department is privy to that, if anyone is paying attention to, because there's a lot of them, there's a lot of pages. If they're a part of them all, to just get a feel of, because again, the parents aren't gonna come here and say it, but they'll definitely have people encouraged. And are we looking at that, is if there's any themes that we should be paying attention to, that could be fixed or addressed, to have social media be a tool to us versus what I call just a toxic society, virtual society.
I'm also just gonna jump in real quick. We have a student here. We're talking about student voice, and I just wanted to invite our students to share just space if you want to have it. Say something.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I agree with a lot of what people were saying here, especially you. Because I think last year, like, I went to a couple board meetings and I was hearing like CCB, 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 so that's why I like asked to join, because it was, everybody was talking about it, but then, and I came, and I do think we have had good conversations and stuff, but I also was a little bit disappointed, I think, by like the amount of action we took, or I felt like a lot of the things we talked about didn't have as big of like an impact, or like we didn't like follow through with them. I don't know exactly how to describe it as much as I would have liked. So that was like one thing I thought. And then also when you were talking about like the student leadership and stuff, like talking to them, there is like this year they started kind of a, not like, but like they're on Wednesday mornings, they like invited a lot of the student leadership, it was Miss Hawkins, I think, to
Ambassadors.
come and talk in the cafeteria. And that was another thing, like, I didn't really feel like there was much done there, like we just talked about it, but then like, it was like, I think if we could kind of combine that, like the student leadership also talking with like adult leadership or other community members, I think that would have a bigger impact and we would be able to get more like actually done if there was more connections between them rather than everybody just talking amongst themselves and nothing actually happening.
Can I ask her a question really quick? Is there, I mean, you see everybody that's here, right? Do you feel if we had been a part of, you said Ms. Hawkins?
Yep.
What Ms. Hawkins had done, would that have felt intimidating? Like, would they be like, where are all these adults here? You know, would you guys as students still feel as free to share about, you know, how you feel about teachers, how you feel about what happens in the hallway, how you know, feel about, you know what I mean? Like, is there a limit to the amount of us in a room that we would still get authentic OPRF community?
Yeah. I think probably like, well, first of all, that's like student leadership also. So a lot of those kids are like comfortable talking with adults and like comfortable sharing their voice. So that's another thing, like students that aren't in leadership, like getting their opinions as well. So I don't really know how to go about that. But I think like if we were to converge the two or like have more interaction between them, like I think small group talking is really helpful with that to help people get comfortable with each other rather than, you know, in a big circle, like only a couple people are talking at a time, maybe people don't feel as comfortable sharing their opinion because it's like, oh, there's a bunch of adults sitting here and this kid, but if you're in smaller groups, then it's like you don't know each other, but you know each other better and you feel more comfortable with each other. I don't know, I think if we were to do that, that would be a good way to go about it.
Can I just say, I really appreciate that you've been with this group all year. Your insights have been really valuable. I appreciate you coming. I appreciate you showing up every time. And I appreciate you contributing. And you've come ready to play. It's been really, really helpful to the working of this group. So I just want to say thank you. We are so far over time, and I really want to be respectful of particularly our staff who are in the room who've been in the building for 13 hours. So I'm going to make the executive decision. We're going to have to do circle time tonight. And yes, I appreciate the irony of me doing that. But we're going to wrap it up in 11 minutes. So I move to adjourn CCB at 7:55.
Second.
Can I hear a second? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you, everyone, for all your candor and your terrific insights tonight. They are so appreciated. And I hope that you will all be returning next year. We're looking forward to an even better year next year. We're gonna think hard and really incorporate all the comments that were made. So I want you to know how deeply we appreciate your honesty tonight and the great thinking.